When Mike hired me to spy on his wife, I never expected to uncover a conspiracy that would shake an entire hospital. But that's exactly what happened. I'm Detective Sarah Collins, and this is how a simple cheating case turned into the biggest medical fraud bust of the decade. 15 years in private investigation teaches you one thing: nothing is ever as simple as it seems. But when Mike Watson walked into my office on a rainy Tuesday morning, I thought this would be a routine case. Successful surgeon thinks his wife's cheating, wants proof for the divorce. Standard stuff. I should have known better when he told me his wife was the hospital's chief of medicine. She's been working late, Mike said, fidgeting with his wedding ring. 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Says it's administrative work, but... He pulled out his phone, showed me text messages. Dr. Emily Watson, telling him not to wait up. Again and again. 27 times in the last 2 months. If you think this is just another cheating spouse story, stick around. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about marriage, medicine, and murder. The first step was basic surveillance. I parked outside St. Mary's Hospital at 8 p.m., watching the staff exit. Dr. Emily Watson emerged at 11:43 p.m., designer bag over her shoulder, heels clicking against the pavement. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the Grand Hotel downtown. Not exactly subtle for someone supposedly hiding an affair. That's what bothered me. After 15 years, I've learned that when something looks too obvious, it usually is. She meets him every Tuesday and Thursday, I told Mike 3 days later, sliding photos across my desk. But here's the weird part. They're not alone. The photos showed Emily meeting with 3 men, all wearing expensive suits, all carrying briefcases. Not exactly your typical affair scenario. Do you recognize any of them? I asked. Mike's face went pale. The one on the left, that's our hospital's biggest medical supplier. Something wasn't adding up. I dug deeper, followed the money. The hospital had recently signed a $50 million contract for medical supplies. Emily, as chief of medicine, had pushed it through, but the pricing was off, way off. Your wife isn't having an affair, I told Mike. She's involved in something much bigger. Then Mike said something that changed everything. I know. That's the real reason I hired you. Think you know where this is going? Trust me, you don't. What happens next shocked even a veteran detective like me. Mike wasn't just a concerned husband. He was an FBI informant. Had been for 6 months. But he couldn't get close enough to the operation. His wife was too careful around him. They're selling counterfeit medical supplies, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Cheap knockoffs from overseas, marked up 1,000%. The hospital pays premium prices, thinking they're getting the real thing. And the difference, I asked, disappears into offshore accounts. Meanwhile, patients get fake heart valves, counterfeit implants. Now, this wasn't just about catching a cheater. People's lives were at risk. Every surgery, every procedure using these supplies was a potential disaster waiting to happen. I set up surveillance cameras in the hotel lobby, planted bugs in the conference room they always used. Standard PI work, but with federal-level implications. The next meeting, I got something unexpected. Emily wasn't just participating in the scheme, she was running it. The FDA inspection is next month. Her voice came through crystal clear on the recording. Everything needs to look perfect. No mistakes, no trace. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. And make sure Mike doesn't suspect anything. If he starts asking questions again, well, accidents happen in hospitals all the time. If you think threatening murder is the worst thing she did, wait until you see what we discovered in the hospital basement. Thursday night, 2 a.m. Mike used his access card to get us into the hospital's restricted basement. What we found wasn't medical supplies. It was a counterfeiting operation. Boxes of fake labels, high-end printers, and something worse, patient files. Hundreds of them, all marked with red X's. These are all the patients who received the fake implants, Mike said, hands shaking as he flipped through folders. Some of these people are already dead. We photographed everything. But as we were finishing, footsteps echoed down the stairs. Emily's voice carried through the darkness. The FDA's moving up the inspection. We need to move everything tonight. Mike and I barely made it into a storage closet. Through the crack in the door, I filmed everything on my phone. But Emily wasn't alone. With her was the hospital board chairman, 2 surgeons, and someone I recognized from the news, a state health inspector. Once the inspection's done, Emily said, we'll have official certification. No one will question our supplies for at least 2 years. The health inspector smiled. Just make sure my offshore account is properly funded this time. Hit subscribe, because what happened next changed the entire medical industry forever. And trust me, you'll want to know what we found in those patient files. As they moved boxes, I kept recording. Each minute felt like an hour in that cramped closet. Then Emily said something that made Mike almost blow our cover. The beauty is, even if someone dies, who's going to question it? They came in sick. Sometimes patients just don't make it. Mike's hands balled into fists. I gripped his arm, warning him to stay quiet. We needed more. Once they left, we moved fast. I connected to the hospital's Wi-Fi, uploaded everything to secure cloud storage. But we weren't done. The FDA inspection, Mike whispered. That's our chance. He was right. With both the FDA and the corrupt inspector present, we could expose everyone at once. But Emily was smarter than we thought. That night, Mike didn't come home on time. My phone rang at 3 a.m. It was the hospital. Mike had been admitted with mysterious symptoms. Emily's voice on the phone was pure ice. You should come quickly. My husband's not feeling well. It wasn't a notification. It was a warning. What happens when a detective becomes the target? Keep watching to see how I turned the tables on a killer doctor. Before heading to the hospital, I made 3 calls. FBI contact. Everything we'd gathered was now in their hands. Local news station. Anonymous tip about tomorrow's FDA inspection. My backup. Ex-military buddy who owed me a favor. Emily wanted to play hardball. Game on. Walking into that hospital was like entering a lion's den. Emily waited at reception. Perfect smile, perfect hair, perfect lies. Mike had an unfortunate reaction to his medication, she said, leading me to his room. These things happen. Yeah, they happen when someone wants them to happen. Mike lay there, hooked up to machines, but something was off. His hand under the blanket was making subtle movements. Morse code, tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. Fake coma. He'd suspected she might try something. Took countermeasures. Smart man. You know, Emily, I said casually, there's something fascinating about hospital basements. Her smile flickered, just for a second. All those boxes, all those labels, all those patient files marked with red X's. The monitors beeped steadily as Emily's perfect facade cracked, just slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, reaching for Mike's IV line. Now, if you'll excuse me, my husband needs his medication. Funny thing about medication, I said, pulling out my phone. I've been recording everything since I walked in, including what you're about to inject into his IV. Her hand froze. The FDA inspectors were due in 20 minutes. What Emily didn't know, they were real ones this time. Her corrupt contact had been picked up by the FBI an hour ago. You know what else is interesting? I continued, watching her face. Hospital security cameras. They catch everything. Like midnight meetings in basements. Like switching out medical supplies. Mike's eyes opened. Like plotting to murder your husband? Emily's composure shattered. She lunged for the door, but it opened before she reached it. FBI agents. Real FDA inspectors. And behind them, news cameras. Dr. Emily Watson, the FBI agent said, "We have some questions about your medical supply chain." The next part? That's where things get really interesting. Stick around to see how deep this medical fraud ring really went. Emily didn't go quietly. Instead, she smiled. That same perfect, practiced smile. "You have no idea what you're dealing with," she said. "This goes higher than you can imagine." She was right. Within hours, the FBI raids started. Not just our hospital. 17 hospitals across 3 states, all connected, all using the same counterfeit supplies. The numbers were staggering. $347 million in fraudulent medical supplies, 4,298 patients, affected 89 deaths, linked to fake implants, 23 doctors and administrators involved. But here's the real shocker. Emily wasn't the mastermind. She was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. "Show them," Mike said from his hospital bed, now fully alert. I pulled out my laptop, showed them the real evidence, financial records going back 5 years. Not just hospital fraud, insurance fraud, Medicare fraud, a whole network designed to profit from people's suffering. And at the top, the last name made everyone in the room go silent. The person behind it all? Let's just say some family trees are filled with poison fruit. Keep watching to see how deep this corruption really goes. The name on my screen, Senator James Watson, Emily's father. Now everything made sense. The political protection, the smooth inspections, the international connections. A state senator using his own daughter's hospital as part of a massive medical supply counterfeiting ring. Within 24 hours, 3 more hospital CEOs arrested. 2 state health officials resigned. 1 pharmaceutical company's stock crashed, and Senator Watson, mysteriously unavailable for comment. But here's what broke me. Emily's phone records, daily calls to a burn unit in Chicago, another to a children's hospital in Detroit. They weren't just selling fake supplies here, Mike said, his voice breaking. They were using our hospital as a test site if patients survived the fake implants here. They rolled them out nationwide, I finished. Emily finally broke under FBI questioning, not because of the evidence, not because of the arrests. She broke because of a single photo I'd placed on the interrogation table, her own medical charts. "You had heart surgery last year," I said. "Guess what kind of valve they used?" Emily stared at her own medical chart, face draining of color. Her heart valve, the one keeping her alive right now, was one of the counterfeits. "Your own father," I said quietly, "put a fake valve in your heart." The perfect facade crumbled completely. She started talking. Didn't stop for 6 hours. The numbers kept growing. 32 hospitals implicated, over 12,000 patients affected, $892 million in fraudulent supplies, 156 deaths linked directly to fake medical devices. Senator Watson was found in his Cayman Islands villa. But he wasn't alone. With him, the head of the FDA's inspection division, 3 pharmaceutical company CEOs, and documentation of an even bigger plan. They were about to take the operation international. This isn't the end. Keep watching, because what happened to Emily next will make you question everything about modern medicine. Emily's heart valve. Doctors gave it 2 months before it would fail. She had a choice. Testify against her father and get immediate surgery, or protect the family and hope she'd survive. Emily chose to testify. But here's where fate played its cruelest card. Her father had destroyed the records of which patients received fake valves, including which specific model was in her chest. The only person who knew, Senator Watson. And he wasn't talking. Surgeons worked round the clock, trying to identify her valve type through imaging, but each model looked identical on scans. That was the point of counterfeiting. Meanwhile, Emily's condition deteriorated, the ultimate price of her own deception. Then Mike found something in their home safe, a personal diary, not Emily's, her father's. Every procedure, every fake device, all documented in his meticulous handwriting, a trophy collection of his crimes. But the diary's last entry changed everything. Emily suspects nothing. Her valve is real. The perfect insurance policy. A daughter who thinks she's dying will never testify. Her father's last manipulation, making Emily think she was dying to keep her quiet. But his own detailed records proved her valve was genuine, the only real one he'd ever arranged. But wait, if Emily's valve was real, what about the others? The final twist will leave you questioning every medical procedure you've ever had. Would you like me to continue with the conclusion and the lasting impact this case had on the medical industry? Senator Watson's diary became the key to everything. Not just Emily's valve, every single procedure, every fake device, every patient, all documented with cold, calculating precision. But that wasn't the worst part. The diary revealed a pattern going back 15 years. 23,456 counterfeit devices, implanted 178 hospitals, compromised $1.2 billion in fraudulent profits. And one disturbing detail, they were targeting specific types of patients. They chose patients who were least likely to cause problems, Emily explained to the grand jury. Elderly, poor, people without families to ask questions. Her voice shook. My father called it strategic risk management. The FBI investigation led to 89 doctors arrested, 12 hospital administrators indicted, 3 FDA officials imprisoned, and 1 senator facing life in prison. But for Emily, the nightmare wasn't over. While her valve was real, she had approved countless fake ones. The guilt was eating her alive. She made a decision that shocked everyone. She pled guilty, refused any deals, asked for the maximum sentence. I might not have a fake valve, she told the judge, but I have something worse. I helped put them in other people's hearts. Think this story's over? Hit subscribe because next week, we're revealing where these fake medical supplies are still being used today. And it might be closer to home than you think. Today, every hospital in America has new safety protocols. The Watson regulations, named not after the senator, but after Mike, who risked everything to expose the truth. Every medical device now has blockchain tracking from factory to patient, triple verification system, patient-accessible serial number verification, independent testing before installation. Emily served 7 years. Mike divorced her, but visited every month. I still love who she was, he told me last week. But more importantly, her testimony has saved thousands of lives. Senator Watson died in prison last month. His last words, check the offshore accounts. The FBI did, found something unexpected, millions in payments to hospitals in Europe and Asia. The network wasn't dead, it had just moved overseas. I still work as a PI, but things are different now. Every medical case gets extra attention. Every hospital tip gets investigated. Emily, she's out now. Works with medical fraud investigators, teaching them what to look for. Her story is required reading in medical ethics classes. Sometimes catching a cheating spouse uncovers something bigger. Sometimes the real betrayal isn't personal, it's institutional. And Mike, he runs a patient advocacy group now. Their slogan? Trust, but verify. Want to know how to check if your medical devices are real? Hit subscribe. Next week's video could save your life. Because in the end, this wasn't just a story about infidelity. It was about the biggest betrayal of all, putting profits over patients' lives. And somewhere out there, another Emily Watson is probably looking at suspicious medical supplies right now, wondering if she should speak up. Let's hope she makes the right choice. This story changed medical regulations forever. But more importantly, it changed how we look at trust in our relationships, our doctors, and our institutions. Because sometimes, the biggest deceptions aren't about love affairs. They're about life and death.